Hello, my name is Antonio Newman Jr., and this is my presentation titled The Microcosm of Racism in America Reflected in the NBA for my class SPEX610 Intercultural Communication for Professionals. Historical Analysis. Sports in the United States has held an extremely vital role in the progression of what is universally defined as equity and fair play for, by, and among its stakeholders, the owners and players. The very foundational concept of a sporting competition ultimately relies on the overall acknowledgement and recognition of athletic excellence measured through the prism of fairness. Sports in the United States has always shared an uneasy account of deep-seated discrimination and racial angst within its long history and illustrious halls of fame. James Naismith in 1891 invented the sport of basketball. The purpose of the sport was to create an indoor winter game to aid in the physical fitness of young men and women. The game became so popular that it circulated throughout the YMCA's in America. It was through the Young Men's Christian Association where black players became involved in the sport. Basketball's popularity continued to grow. In 1923, the New York Renaissance, also known as the Big Five/the Wrens, debuted as the first all-black professional sports team in history. The history of U.S. sports, amateur and professional, did not go without clear traces of discrimination and bigotry. The 1900s represented a time in America where non-white athletes were purposefully excluded from participating in organized international and professional sports. There were only a handful of non-white players featured in some of the original professional leagues. The NBA did not debut a black player until Halloween 1950. It was Earl Lloyd who broke the color barrier in his first NBA game as a member of the Washington Capitals. The ratio of white and non-white players in the NBA now, there is 81.7% non-white players in the league, with 18.3% representing the ratio of white players counted, which are of European, Canadian, and Australian descent. Barriers to intercultural communication. When using intercultural communication as a means of measuring cultural barriers regarding non-white players within the NBA, one views a failure to truly integrate any subculture when the intent of the dominant one is to remain dominant. This practice has continued to inevitably lead to instances of communication barriers such as anxiety, ethnocentrism, bias, stereotypes, racism, implicit bias, and privilege. These barriers can clearly be seen within the NBA because they exist in society. Barriers to Intercultural Communication Part 2. In America, when racism is pitted against non-white subcultures, similar to the experience lived on by non-white players in the NBA, racism is not simply the expression of the dislike or mistreatment due to race or skin color. In actuality, racism reveals itself to be a complicated and deeply ingrained ideological construct that encourages the belief in superiority of one race over all others. That belief is then put into systems of hierarchical advantage to create privilege for anyone but the non-white subcultures. This showed itself when, in the early days of the NBA, there was an unspoken rule that teams, after the color barrier was broken, could only have up to two non-white players on the team. A few years later, it was pushed to three, but it shows just how unfortunate and how deep-seated the belief of being better than another because of the color of his skin can go, and how far people are willing to take it. Intercultural communications solutions. Although the league players and National Basketball Players Association work together, there is an additional role to be played by the NBA Board of Governors, which involves more than $300 million put towards establishing the first NBA Foundation. My proposal is that the NBA governors utilize a portion of the $300 million established under the foundation to invest and support future minorities to become governors within the NBA's G League teams. This initiative would empower minorities with the experience needed in successfully running day-to-day basketball operations and counter intercultural barriers such as negative stereotypes, implicit bias, racism, prejudice, and white privilege. A second solution that we have would be utilizing players from each of the 30 teams to represent the league's commitment for cultural diversity Community investments. This is another proposed solution that will counter negative barriers and will garner community strength. This particular initiative could begin with schools and recreation centers whereby educational platforms are used to assist the younger generation of fans in understanding positive and negative communication barriers while explained by their favorite NBA players. Community unification, gender/transgender equality, and understanding anti-racist comprehensive tactics would be emphasized along with intercultural pride and inclusion. The sharing of positive intercultural communication tactics will be vital to the establishment of how each group could exhibit pride and dignity for their own subculture while actively facilitating cultural harmony. Solutions continued. Under the NBA's Social Justice Task Force, I propose this initiative should be expanded by including educational camps centered around workshops that emphasize the recognition of positive cultural norms and the importance of rejection of implicit bias and prejudice in society so that unification of our cultures and communities at large may flourish. When the Commissioner, Board, and Governors are seen making this initiative a priority, the solution creates a unified front between the league, the players, and the communities. Communication strategy. Our communication strategy will be a memo that will be shared with the NBA Commissioner and the Board of Governors that consists of the proposed solutions to intercommunication barriers which still exist in the NBA. The proposed solutions that have been submitted and considered for possible implementation are stated to all parties involved with the sole objective to foster better communication strategies both short and long term regarding future endeavors. Our communication strategy will be a 7-step strategy. The first step in the communication strategy is to send via email the memo to Adam Silver, the NBA Commissioner, and the Board of Governors by April 2021. The second step will be having a pre-meeting in May 2021 with the NBA Commissioner, Michelle Roberts, the Executive Director of the NBPA, Chris Paul, the President of the Players Association, and each team's player representative. This meeting will be scheduled to answer any general questions regarding the initial memo. The third step to the communication strategy will occur when all official communication goes out regarding the agreed upon time, location, and agenda of the conference in July 2021. This information will be sent to all NBA team players and to the Board of Governors. The fourth step in the communication strategy will be communications from Chris Paul and Michelle Roberts sent to Adam Silver with the purpose of establishing the NBA State of Affairs Conference format. At this time, the addressing of all conference issues and establishing of committees will be shared by May 2021. The fifth step of the communication strategy will be the actual NBA State of Affairs Conference, where all parties will be prepared to discuss issues pertaining to them and any additional questions. During this time, the committees will be focused on addressing specific issues and sharing details. The sixth step in the communication strategy will be the public announcement given by Adam Silver, the Board of Governors, Chris Paul, and Michelle Roberts. This public announcement will disclose the particulars of the discussion summary and detail what was agreed by all parties in the NBA State of Affairs Conference. This information will be sent and shared with the players, the NBA teams, and their executives. The final step in the communication strategy will be the long-awaited press release. This release will include the final summary results and is to be shared with the NBA community. This is the end of my presentation. I thank you all for your time. Have a great rest of your day.